I'm standing here in front of my biggest success at Dustups, which is starting this young desert forest. But honestly, it's also my biggest failure. My standard is Lightning Ridge, Australia. Same amount of rainfall and probably more difficult soil conditions. I planted 42 different species, and this Palo Verde species is the main success. Everything else didn't want to grow. In order to get this place looking like Lightning Ridge, I need to do an honest assessment of what isn't working, because I'm on a mission to build the desert forest that I know is possible, but I've only been able to get a single type of seed to germinate, which is these trees. I've just been starting with trees, putting them in the ground and trying to shove enough water there, and the trees are just too picky. It's too risky for them to try germinating when the conditions are not absolutely perfect. The only way I see is to use beans and cheap seeds. The good thing about beans is that they're just so cheap to do. So we can put the beans in the ground, get the canopy, and then those tree seeds, which are generally very expensive, sometimes $250, $300 a pound for native trees, that I can't put enough seed down to actually expect to succeed. So I have to buy the cheap seeds that make the budget work, that provide the shade, and also that doesn't cost $1,000 worth of hay and all the time it takes to spread it around everywhere. It's a lot easier to put seeds in the ground, put water through a tube, grow my own mulch, grow my own shade, and have everything else come in behind it. But let's jump ahead in time a little bit. This is footage from Monday this week, and the seeds went in the ground 3 weeks prior on January 4th. You can see that everything that you're about to watch me do in this episode pays off. And the reason is being completely obsessed with water. You'll see there's no mulch on the ground. There's nothing really to help this process. What I've done is try to pick the right mix of plants that are going to respond to the moisture that I can put down, that's going to keep the canopy in place so that when we get to the summer and we need the trees to germinate, we have the shade, a biological shade already in place so that the trees can just poke through it, and that we can keep up with the water demands even in the middle of the summer. Lightning Ridge is the showcase of what's possible with syntropic agroforestry in a semi-arid environment, basically a desert. I chose that as my standard because the average annual rainfall and the difficulty of the soil conditions are the best approximation of what I can achieve out here. Credit goes to Tiago Barbosa from Syntropic Solutions. He's the mastermind behind Lightning Ridge, and he is one of the key reasons why you see all of that dense vegetation growing like a wall of plants. All of mine are pretty much growing like a line of scattered trees. When Tiago sent me the beginning footage from Lightning Ridge, I was blown away because look at all the rocks they have in the soil. I mean, it's not exactly the same soil conditions at Dustups, but pretty darn close. And look today what they've turned this into. They started with a blank slate of dirt and rocks, and now they have a real, genuine desert forest. This is what I'm trying to build. And I'll show you how Daniel's success getting all of these cowpeas to grow earlier this year gave me the knowledge to understand how to put all of the moving pieces together. This line of retired cowpeas is what helped everything click for me. And to understand not just how succession happens, but how I can organize it in a way that works with the seasons, my budget, water resources, all of those things. When we started these cowpeas, Daniel literally threw cowpeas very densely in a line along with some hydrogel, raked it in, and completely forgot about it. And then 2.5 weeks later, we had a very dense canopy of cowpeas germinating with no help at all. The reason that's such a big epiphany is I need to start shading the soil as fast as possible. And I did not realize this when I started, but January is the ideal time to do this because it's so cold. That the sun is at its lowest. That means that there's the least amount of pressure keeping the soil moist as possible. But it also limits the options because I can't grow cowpeas in the middle of the winter. So fava beans and cereal rye. And that's actually what you see here growing next to me is cereal rye that I planted a couple of months ago. Over on the windbreak right there, I'm able to start following a process that can be totally mechanized, but I don't have a tractor, so I'm going to show you why that is so much more efficient and it's a much better way to start things. And then I'll explain how this is going to set up the next cycle of succession until we get to trees. I'm starting out my new system here on this terrace, SW2, and what I want you to see is the amount of time and effort required in order to get the seeds in the ground around all of this work that I've already done. I can't just treat the irrigation system as a hang-up. I want to maximize my opportunity. So the best thing I can do is to work where we already have an irrigation system and we've already got mulch and soil amendments and everything ready to go, the terraces. So let's get some seeds ready to plant and then we'll get them in the ground and start proving this change of plans. Although, we're gonna have to change the spacing because the drip emitters are 2 feet apart. So I'm gonna have micro islands rather than one continuous strip, but I'm gonna do my best. We have the inoculant and the globe mallow and the fava. Oh boy, that's heavy. That's not even worth bringing inside because we're not going to need that much. I'm trying to do this in a way that I'll be able to close the bag. Surely there's a better way to cut this and make it reusable, but I don't know it. There we go. I would rather have too much than too little, so there. Well, it'd help if you turn the water on. That's the residual pressure. We have this rhizobium inoculant. We'll drain the beans and then plant this, and then we'll mix this stuff in. So we'll do that tomorrow. We'll put the beans inside. One other small task I need to do is to put the Johnson Sioux on the beans. Single batch for the beans and a single batch for the globe mallow. Best thing I can do is get the water boiling for the globe mallow. That was way easier. Good grief. All right. Okay, that ought to be all the globe mallow that's needed. Now we're just going to wait for that water to cool off, and then we'll soak these for about 24 hours. And later tonight, when the water really cools off, I'll add the Johnson Sioux. And I've got some white thorn acacia seeds, so I'm going to spend them. They need the same treatment as globe mallow, so we want this to be about 170 or 180. And we're already down to 195. Current temperature 176. So that's all good. I'm gonna put these guys in a metal container. There we go. May as well use the thermometer for stirring. And now we do the shaking. This is the Johnson Sioux compost. Now look at the timestamp, it was 21. So I have to shake this until the camera says 151. What this is doing is this is full, this is a fungal dominated compost, and this really is enough to inoculate the entire batch. So I'm gonna pour about half the water after this is shaken onto the fava beans, and then I will pour the rest onto the globe mallow once the water has cooled down. Maybe that'll be in an hour, maybe it'll be in 12. That part, well, it's better to put it in the water sooner so that the soil microbes coat the seeds and go in the ground when I plant them. But I also don't want to burn them. Anytime I scarify seeds, people commenting, "You're killing the seeds." I didn't invent this method. This is really common, and it's very, very common for desert plants that have very hard exterior coats on the shells. I'm just following the instructions from people that know better than I do. But if you don't scarify, it's going to take forever for them to germinate. Okay, so those, it's been more than 90 seconds, so I'm good. Let's dump some in the fava beans. Okay, and then the rest will go in with the, well, I think if it's under 130, we can add it. I'm still a little warm. Whoever sent me this table, by the way, thank you so much, because I didn't ask for it and it wasn't on the wish list, and we use this all the time. So if you have a really strong opinion on what we should be using at camp and you want to send something, I do have a P.O. box, and I do have the Amazon option where you can send whatever you feel like. So if that appeals to you and you would like to contribute, some of you have awesome ideas. I wouldn't have even known to ask for this. It's planting time, so I'm gonna get a sieve, and this is the globe mallow. Get all the extra water out. Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm not losing seeds. Okay, and now this is just going to take a tiny amount of inoculant, and this is going to get sloshed around in the truck. It would be better for me to really thoroughly mix this, but one is I don't think I actually need this. I think the beans will do just fine because of how many legumes grow out here, but it doesn't hurt to make sure. Use about 1/50 of the inoculant, I think so. Here and here, and that's it. Let's go. And I just noticed that some of this globe mallow has already got green spots in it, meaning it's germinating. So it's not overwhelming, but it absolutely needs to get in the ground as fast as possible. I gotta get to work on the fava beans as quickly as possible. And I got some live oak acorns. We'll throw those in there, why not? Those are from my house that collect in the truck bed. Okay. These are low tunnels, or at least they used to be before the wind ripped all the fabric off. It's by far the most successful method that I've done because, well, we had a lot of growth down here, especially towards the end where we had the best shade. The problem is the labor. It took me almost a full day just to do this 20-yard stretch. Now, if it turns out that that's absolutely what I have to do to make things happen, I will do that. But if I can avoid the labor and the time and the expense, I need to find a better way. This little moringa is a great example of why the low tunnels can work so well. I applied almost no extra supplemental irrigation to that, and with the help of a humidity dome and no mulch, I was able to get a moringa to grow, and still it's early January and it's still alive. Now, it's almost certainly gonna die next week when the freeze comes. The goal was not to grow moringa in that hole. The goal was to prove to myself that I could get moringa to germinate in that hole because the seeds are so cheap, and I wanted to learn while I could. I can actually feel there's some moisture in there, which is great. I'm planting these beans just like cactus. Put the blade in, grab a handful, and then as I'm sliding this out, I push them down. That gets it as deep as they can reasonably go in the soil without destroying my fingers, which are getting kind of cut up, but they're getting tougher the more I do it. I tried growing in holes like this, which I called bird nests, because they do resemble a bird nest. The problem with that one is that I wasn't watering enough, and the seeds wouldn't get the moisture signal, and specifically the humidity signal that they needed in order to germinate. I then tried to compensate by adding mulch on top, but most of the trees can't grow through the mulch layer. Between the humidity domes, the low tunnels, I've actually circled all the way back to these bird nests, trying to balance mulch and exposure so the trees can get through it. But I'm not going to start with the trees. I'm starting with fava beans because it's the winter, it's cold, and fava beans can grow up to 5 feet tall in a single season. I mostly collected the sorghum seeds already, but probably doesn't hurt to spread some of them here where they're already growing. So these flags mean a tree was here. Didn't make it. Hey, there is a tree here. It's a sweet acacia. It's not doing particularly well, but it's alive. So we are going to mulch this guy super aggressively with all that sorghum that I just cut. You can see I added a little bit of this red amaranth as mulch, but we need to do way more. I think that counts as aggressive mulching. Okay, so the globe mallow is still wet. I gotta make the dry mix now. These are kind of little seeds. Definitely little seeds. Mix all the little stuff together with the big stuff. So the forming salt bush isn't super important. I'm just throwing it down because that one doesn't really care when it gets planted. And we have generic pasture seed mix. Daikon radish, winter fat. Some oats. And cereal rye. I may come back with a hoe. So we're gonna do this in stages. I've done the fava beans first because they have to be buried the deepest. These can basically go on the surface, and I can come back with a hoe and get it mixed in, and then just drop the little stuff, which just needs the tiniest little scuff to get soil contact. So this should go quick. I even tried planting seeds in tires that I buried in the ground. The idea was to keep the soil cooler so we could keep that water on the surface longer to get the humidity that the trees need in order to get started. I made mistakes with that by adding too much hydrogel, but again, each one of these tires takes quite a while to bury, and dealing with all of these rocks, it's pretty unforgiving. The fava beans took 3 hours for me to plant the whole thing. So, I mean, it took a ridiculous amount of time, but I'm trying to plant just way too much. But I am going to have to come back and agitate this. I don't think a hoe is going to do any good here. I need my... And a lot of the times here, I can see where I've agitated the ground for the fava beans. Makes this so much faster. I've been finding insects in here all morning. A little ant and a big wasp. But the main thing I've been fighting is beetles, all sorts of different kinds. That kind. These two, actually, those two right there. So you got this guy right there and that one. I don't know what kind of beetle that is. It kind of looks like the leaf-footed stink beetles that plague Texas tomatoes, but I can tell they're different. I just don't know what they are. You can see a bunch of sorghum seeds that I dropped. I found some sorghum that I cut down because I let the seeds form. And for the ones that I hadn't picked up, I just spread it everywhere. See the fly down there? Nope, same beetle. 2 beetles. Okay, and now for the fine mix, which is going to be chia. Ideally, I would use the native southwestern chia, but this is also like 10% of the price. So I'm going to use the chia kind of as a bulking agent. I know I didn't plant anything here because I didn't see the emitter. Okay, so I have to mix so that I get soil contact with all the seeds that I dropped. I'm struggling to get the seeds to not stick together, so I'm going to use this prepared, it's mostly screen soil with some biochar in it. It's really just to dry it out. And also, I'm hoping that if I can break up the clumps, And I can just start planting this directly and then smash it down, and I don't have to worry about covering the seeds because the seeds should be, to some degree, buried as I add this material. That should fix the clumping and the burying problem all at the same time. So this is my most recent one. Tamp down. Gosh, that's so much better. What an improvement. All right. I'm all done. It was just now shy of 1 o'clock, so I've been out here since 8. So it took me 5 hours to plant that whole thing, which means by the time I go back, eat lunch, and give myself a break, because, you know, writing software is exhausting, but it's a mentally exhausting kind of work that also leads to a lot of anxiety. This is just hard physical work that you do have to turn your brain on, but every once in a while. And I'm still getting used to the physical nature of all this. I think I'm in pretty good shape, but this kicks my butt. As you can tell, I got my super cool outfit on. I got back to camp for lunch. It's now 40 minutes later. Just had some potato salad and a whole bunch of water with lemon juice. I was pretty dehydrated. And I shed my clothes in a giant hurry just to get out of them and feel comfortable. And now, because I worked so hard, I'm not going to let these seeds dry out. So I'm going to run the irrigation now. I'm going to have to babysit it for a little bit. Just make sure that I didn't break any emitters while I was running around, because I did use my feet a lot just to keep my back and my hips happy. Let's go check the emitters. Excited on this terrace. This is the upper one, and you can see all the grass that grew this year, in addition to a fair amount of palmer amaranth on the inside, but the grass is the exciting thing. Hear the pressure building up. Now I want to show you guys, get a sense for how the water spreads out on the soil surface. So this line is what I want you to see right here. The water lands directly under the emitter and it spreads out, but that's not what it looks like underground. Underground, it tapers into a cone, and the first thing that's going to dry is this edge. So the seeds planted here are the most vulnerable, and the closer they are to the emitter, the safer they're going to be. That also applies to seeds over here that are actually on the drip line. If I had emitters spaced every 6 inches instead of every 2 feet, I wouldn't have to worry about these seeds drying out. It gives me more opportunity and it requires less overall water, whereas having these too far apart is leading to drying out faster. So instead of having a continuous line, I'm going to have mini island. Mini island, it's not bad, but it's not ideal. And I have plans for this guy at camp. So while I was irrigating the terraces, I had a little epiphany because I saw this that we used so successfully in the low tunnel. And that made me realize I'm not completely stuck. I can start irrigating right now. So more planting for me, but luckily, hey, this is the advantage. Now I can do it near camp where I've got, you know, water, shade, food, all the amenities where taking a break doesn't feel like such a big deal. So I'm gonna put on some better footwear and I'm gonna plant all that stuff here while I still have about 2 hours of daylight. This should go way faster because I'm not digging around things. Yeah, I got my dad outfit on. Don't care. It's 75 degrees or 24 Celsius in January. It is really hot for the time of year. So knowing I'm at camp and I can be comfortable, I'm going to be comfortable. And I've got just enough parts, I think, to make it work. Let's first see how much line we have. Okay, we're gonna start here. So this is the line. You know, I don't think we actually have any germinations over here. So I won't hurt anything if I do this one. Right here. It's already furrowed and everything, although definitely gonna screen some of this stuff. And I think we have enough to go all the way to the end. We'll probably be a little too long, which is good. You gotta be careful with this stuff because yanking and pulling will just lead to tearing. This is so close to the end, it seems silly to just not start at the end. So let's pull this out of the line, get it out of the way, go get the trenching tool. What I'm hung up on is that big stretch of gravel there. I'm obviously not very excited about it, so to the extent I can, I'm gonna pick the rocks. I guess I'm gonna bring the wheelbarrow and just throw them in there by hand because I can't think of a better way to do it. I generally find it helps if you put the rocks in the wheelbarrow instead of outside of it. Well, I'm glad to see there's moisture down there. That's good. So this wall that you see, I've been building it just by picking stones a little bit at a time, like when I'm cooking and I'm bored. I don't know if that was faster, but at least it was a different stress position on my body. So my hips were screaming at me from hunching over like that, shoveling or picking the whole day. But being able to use my hip and the trenching tool went much smoother. Now it'll go super fast. Let's get the fava beans. I'm gonna start too far away because I have way too many fava beans. What's funny is I can tell where I did a great job by screening and doing all the hard work, and then there are the spots where I went faster because, well, the daylight's running out. Way too many. Which is fine. We'll chop it into mulch as we go. You know, for as hot and tired as I was, feels awfully good right now. This is always the reward at the end of the day. Look at that view. I can actually feel humidity in the air, which is great. And I will get this done in a reasonable time to where I can run the irrigation both here and again up at the terrace. So at the terrace, the diaphragm pump overheated, and I'm sure it got a pretty decent soak, enough to not kill everything, but we'll go make sure that I didn't lose my pump and that all the seeds get a good drink. And I'm intentionally burying these kind of shallow because I'm going to do a second pass with the medium-sized seed mix. I'm here in person and I'm looking at the screen. Not the same. Y'all are missing out. Sometimes the manure isn't completely clean, clean being trash. So it's not all a win, but mostly. Now for the medium-sized seeds. Probably gonna need a rake for the next part, or to cover these up. There's a little pressure left in the hose, so we don't waste water. Oh my goodness. Duh. There we go. I don't want to turn it on more than I need to, just so I don't overpressurize it. Maybe I'm gonna have to cut it, but running. Daniel comes tomorrow. I'll see if he can pick up 100 feet of soaker hose just as a band-aid. What I've come to understand from the windbreak is the way these species are going to support the growth of the species that come behind it. And although I understood that as a concept before I even started this project, I didn't know enough of the mechanics of all the way these beans and flowers grow together to understand how to actually engineer it. What's going to happen is the fava beans and the cereal rye are going to germinate and grow, and that's going to happen over the next 2 months. The chia and the globe mallow and the mustard are also there. They will germinate except for the globe mallow, because that is the crop that we want to come next. So as these beans grow up nice and tall, they're going to be providing an environment that shelters the globe mallow from the wind and from the sun, that helps keep a little more water on the soil surface. When that's in place, the globe mallow is going to be able to get a foothold and stay growing long enough that it can provide shade. Sometime in March or April, the fava beans are going to start feeling too much heat pressure and we need to replace them. And that's where the cowpeas are going to come in. The cowpeas will grow in the shade of the fava just enough to get them to germinate. Then we raise them up and cut down the fava, and now we have a continuous canopy keeping the globe mallow safe. Over the next month or two after that, then we can plant the tree seeds because the soil is covered. We have a source of mulch, there's nitrogen being pumped in, and each little step you take 2 steps forward, you cut it down, which is a step backward, but then you're providing the light and the conditions to keep moisture on the soil surface so that the next batch of plants can grow. Budget is very, very much a key consideration in how we're doing things. And what you'll notice are blue flags and green flags. Green flags are the pinnacle trees that we really want to grow here. And the system is going to be, with the green flag, mesquite, jujube, jujube, mesquite, jujube, jujube, mesquite, and following that pattern. And because we will be able to put tons of seeds down in each of those spots, we expect them to succeed, but they're going to require a lot of higher performing mulch in order to make it happen. And that's what these blue flags are for. There's a group of cuttings that I have that's Mexican sunflower, Tithonia diversifolia, and it is a major resource in subtropic agroforestry. It's a little too cold here, so I can't plant it until March, but it's on a 3-foot spacing. And in between all of these spaces, I'm going to use the cheap seeds, especially things like moringa, to get the system going so that I have a source of mulch that I can chop it. What I'm trying to do is to trade water for biomass and microbial activity. I want the water to grow the shade so that the water becomes more efficient, so that we can grow more biomass and get the system acting like a flywheel so that it reinforces its own growth and speeds up over time. The plan has 2 parts, and you know what? I'm honestly not convinced it needed to have 2 parts. Everything seemed to encourage me to not plant seeds on this first go round. So I'm gonna do what I think is best, which is to plant in 2 stages, knowing that it's gonna take a lot of time to go in and fill these gaps with the moringa and poplar and the tithonia and all the things that I need to get the density that I'm looking for. I want to copy Lightning Ridge here in Texas. But longer term, it would be great if I could not just put the fava beans in the ground, if I could put all the cowpeas down there and the moringa and everything that I want to exist, so that you plant once, water, do this babysitting, watering once, and then over time just have the system explode. That's for a later date. With the windbreak, this is a pretty decent sized area that's really important because we need a windbreak. And then when we move on towards our next planting area, which will be the mega swale, then we can apply the lessons that we learned here, because I don't think the chances of us planting the swale are likely at all anytime in the next 4 or 5 months. So as we get more momentum here, we'll see how we perform and then apply those lessons over to the next area. If you enjoyed this episode, I do want to bask in the success story of building a desert forest. So here's the update episode of 2 years building a desert forest. Check it out.